Welcome to Productive Joy with Dr. Christie, where fun meets action.
Hi, friends. Welcome to Productive Joy. I am so excited to introduce you to my new friend, Bill, but I need you to follow this podcast first. It makes such a difference. And share it with your friends, okay? Because productive joy is worth spreading. So I have with me today Bill Blankschaen. Bill is lots of fabulous things, including, but not limited to, he's a best-selling author. He's a thought leader. He's an impact builder. He is a story architect. His superpower happens to be thinking. He is a professional processor, if you will. He's a dad to 6 who all happen to be Disney fanatics, so much so that his youngest, Elias, who is 18 now, they have figured out has spent at least a year of his life on Disney properties, which is impressive in and of itself and expensive, sir. And I am so excited to have you as a guest today on Productive Joy.
Well, it's my pleasure to be here, Christy. You bring such joy to the conversation. I can't help but come in with productive joy.
That's wonderful. That's my hope, for sure. And we're going to have a fascinating conversation today. And I can't wait to get started. So let's jump right in with you telling us something that is going to pique the audience's attention, like get them super excited.
Well, I think each of us wants our life to matter. We want it to mean something. I don't think there's anybody who walks around thinking, boy, I wish my life was meaningless today. Even if they feel like that, they would prefer it weren't that, right? And so what I would say is that I believe at a very deep level that every story matters. And everybody has a story. Everybody's living a story. And there's tremendous power in that story. I can see it through my own story as well. But I think that's the big idea that I would love people to just ponder today is the value of their own story and the what they can do with that story is the potential is amazing.
Well, and you believe this so much that you have a company called Story Builders.
Right? Yes. And that's just an extension of who I am. Frankly, that's where that comes from and that passion.
So this professional thinker who recognizes the value of a story starts a business called Story Builders, but you didn't start there. You got there. So why don't you tell us a little bit about the journey that got you to this point?
Sure. Let me take you back. I mean, there was a time when I was running a private school that I helped found up in Ohio, and it was doing good work. I was helping kids, getting hugs from kindergartners, getting cool pictures that I still have in a folder, right? Helping teenagers transition into adulthood, working with families. But inside, I felt like I was meant for more. I was called for more. There was something else that was deeper. See, from a young age, I had always thought of myself as a writer, but I wasn't writing. I'd always thought of myself as a storyteller, but I wasn't really telling stories. And so there came a time where I was like, I don't want to regret not leaning into whatever that is. So I had to let go of the good for the potential of pursuing the great that only I could do. So I did. I was like, again, 6 kids, walked away from the school, transitioned out of the school into this new pursuit. And it was not easy. Never worked harder in my life, but it wasn't easy at all. I remember there was one day I was sitting out in the backyard in Ohio, a beautiful spring day, the sun shining, the breezes wafting over me, and the birds are chirping, and I'm writing a book, ideas around a book. On the outside, everything was wonderful, but on the inside, I was like, oh man, I think, is this even going to work? I think, what if we end up living under a bridge somewhere? And so it's been long. Yeah. But I kept moving forward in the face of that. And because of that, actually the book I was working on at that time ended up being picked up by a publisher, ended up discovering through that I was actually really good at this. And other people began to ask for my help with their books. And I began doing more books. And out of that came Story Builders, where now we've helped all sorts of people from, big names to middle names and everywhere in between, just tell their story well. And that's why I believe that the big takeaway for me from my experience was that your breakthrough begins when you start with your story. And having the courage to do that opens up so many possibilities for influence, impact, and income.
What do you think prevents people from being willing to tell their story? Because I think we all have one, right? Like you said, but I'm not sure that everybody recognizes that it's okay to tell it. Why do you think that is?
Well, I think there's at least 5 traps. I won't talk about all of them, but let's talk about 2 of them. One is what I call the confidence trap. And that is we tend to deify others and diminish ourselves. Right, so we tend to think, Christy, your story is amazing. I mean, look at you. You're amazing. Look what you've done. But me, not so much. I mean, my story isn't that great. I don't really have anything. It's this kind of built-in human tendency to belittle ourselves. So one of it is moving past that confidence trap. I tell this story often where I had lunch with somebody in New York City once. If I said her name, her last name, everybody would know the last name. And I had lunch with her. We were talking about doing a project together. And as we talked, she confided in me. She said, sometimes I walk into these big boardrooms that I'm getting paid a lot of money to come in and advise them. And I don't have a lot of confidence in me, in my message. And I think they really only want to talk to me because of my last name. And at that point, I realized, all right, if you're struggling with that, then it's common to everybody. Everybody struggles with this, right? And I've seen LA to New York and everywhere in between, at every level, everybody struggles with this confidence thing. I think that's a big one.
Yeah, I would agree. And, just because you have the name doesn't mean that you walk around knowing that you've got an extra. Now, you might be perceived that way.
Exactly.
Right? Like
exactly.
I can exude confidence. I do not have a problem with that. It's the worth
Totally.
sometimes. And, I think most people fall into that trap. So how do you help them go from, I'm really not that great to, I have this amazing story to tell?
I think the first thing we have to understand is the power of our story and what we mean by story. So I call it the story multiplier formula is how I think about it. And that's the extent of the math that I do, by the way. I think of it as who times S equals I cubed. What do I mean by that? Who you are, your hardwiring, your personality, your experiences, your learning, everything that makes up who you are gets multiplied by how well you tell your story. That's that S component, right? So how well you tell your story then determines that impact, influence, and income, those three I's. Right. So it begins with tapping into who you are and understand that your story has intrinsic value, your uniqueness. That one of the other traps that I think is the normalcy trap. Right. Our story feels normal to us because we've lived it. And so we think it's nothing special until we share it with somebody who's like, that's amazing. That's exactly what I needed to hear. That's exactly what I needed to know because you're farther along. Like somebody were coming to me with 6 kids and then maybe they're just starting out or they've got some preteens or something. They're like, oh, I don't know what to do in this situation. I could say, oh yeah, I encountered that several times. I don't think anything of it, but to them, it's a lifesaver of giving them insight. So you just need to be 1 or 2 steps further along than somebody else as an individual to do that. But then as an organization too, I think organizations don't tap into their stories well enough as well. They ignore their origin stories and they don't tell that story well. And because of that, they just kind of remain stuck in that process.
So you help, I'm taking feverish notes at the moment.
No, that's good.
You help both businesses and individuals get to the point where they can tell their story to propel themselves, their brand, so give us a through line for how you help people.
Yeah, I call it your story ecosystem because it really is this organic universe that you're creating that is self-sustaining. So the story ecosystem begins with getting clear on your brand story, kind of the circle at the core of that. And for an individual building their brand, that's certainly getting clear on their story, how they're telling it, what their direction is. But for an organization as well, getting clear on what is our story? Who are we at the core? Who are we serving at the core? And most importantly, how are we telling that story in a way that connects with who we want to connect with? Right? It isn't just about us. So that brand story, the next bigger circle out is the message multiplier. The brand story is your message maker. The message multiplier is typically a book. And so we specialize in creating brand defining books, brand defining storytelling from soup to nuts, start to finish, writing with you, writing for you, all that stuff, publishing, all that space.
Right.
And so that's for an individual, thought leader, entrepreneur, business professional, makes sense, but also for organizations, creating a book that really tells their story well as well. And then the final piece is your intellectual property, the message monetizer. What do you do with that? Do you create a course? Do you create a workshop? Do you create a membership? Do you create whatever that might look like? Ways that you can, once you've created that core intellectual property, how do you monetize it? How do you turn it into other products and services and the ways that you can turn it into something that's producing money? So that's that story ecosystem. So that's what we do. We focus on building out all components of that story ecosystem to help people really take full advantage of their story.
So you went from running a school to helping businesses get clear on their message or people get clear on their message so that they are able to hit their target audience. How do those two things go together exactly?
Yeah. I would say, well, first of all, from a young age, I always loved stories and storytelling.
Well,
And
you said
so
you were a writer and a storyteller that wasn't
exactly, I always
storytelling.
thought of myself, I was the nerdy kid who read the cereal box 5 times every morning while he was eating breakfast, right? Just constantly reading, sucking that up. I was the one who would ride my bike to the library on the weekends as a teenager and read Shakespeare, right? It was like, okay, that's the nerd, right?
Yeah, but
But that's
you got to know.
that's the genius. Yeah. That's the genius coming alive. So I think that the through thread is when I was running a school, I was helping other people. How do you tell stories well? How do you do this? How do you write? How do you do all these kind of things? And then reaching that point of realizing there was something deeper than that. I mean, deeper than all of it, quite honestly, is a passion to help people live a story worth telling. And I think that's the end product of all this. We talk about influence, impact, and income. That's really about living a life that is fulfilling and robust and impact and making a difference in the world. So the school, making a difference in the world. What we do as story builders, making a difference in the world. We like to say we tell stories that make the world a better place. And so to me, that's the through line through all of it. And story just gets interwoven throughout the entire journey.
What a beautiful tapestry of things that you
Right.
are doing for people. Like that's special. So when I very first decided that I wanted to have a company on my own, I have had no idea what I was doing. And the group that I used was Brand Builders. And
I know Rory and AJ well. Yes.
yeah, they're very cool humans. But the
Sure.
challenge actually came from a podcast of take what it is that you do and turn it into one word. What problem do you solve in one word? And
Mhm.
that's hard.
Sure.
But what I came up with was mediocrity because nobody wants to be mediocre.
Good one.
I said that earlier, right? Nobody
Sure.
wants to say, yep, this is going to,
Sure.
my story is
Yeah.
not worth telling.
Yeah.
And I want to help people be extraordinary and leave
Sure.
better than I found them. Is there a magical practice that you can do with people who are a little all over the place, like me?
Sure.
I'm a little all over the place, to get them to the point where they are laser focused on the story worth telling?
Yes, we go through that process with our brand story, with our books. I mean, yes, we have a number of different questions that we go through. Might be helpful to share a couple of them, actually.
Yeah, please.
We
Tell us.
call them book starter questions, but they're also helpful in brand story, figure out your story, all those kind of things as well. So yeah, I think there's a couple here. One of the first questions I ask at the beginning of any conversation is if somebody were to read your book or engage with your story or your brand or experience or something like that, and they would forget 98% of the interaction of what they read, it all goes right in their eyes and out their ears or whatever the case may be. They don't remember any of it. What's the one thing that you were like, no, if they forget everything, this is the one thing that I want to stick.
Mm.
If they forget that I even existed on the earth, but they remember this one thing. And there's something about that question that people often know what that is, or
Yeah.
they're very close to knowing what that is, even if they're not fully aware of it. And so they'll often very quickly jump, hey, I want them to remember this. It's almost like if I had to put it on a tombstone or if I had to, send somebody one last telegram, what would it be? What would I want the world to hear from me? And what I want to hear is every story matters. Right? And that's what I want people to hear from me. And so when you have that kind of clarity, then that really begins to drive a lot of things. Of I could build a brand around that. I mean, I love what you've done with Productive Joy. I feel like that's such and especially when you said mediocrity, right, is the problem you're solving.
Yeah.
And Productive Joy, I presume, is going to be the solution, right? This is how you break out of it, right? So I could see so much that you already are doing with that as a result of getting that clarity, right? That's fueled you. So it provides that fuel, it provides clarity. So that's one question I think we start with to get a sense of that. The second question is what I call the needle mover question. And the needle mover question is, how do you want the world to change as a result of your sharing your message?
Mm.
And it's important here not just to think about tactics like I want this to change to that, but how will it feel when you see that change take place?
Ooh.
I think I mentioned to you prior to getting on here is that I was talking to a young man who we had worked with 3 or 4 years ago now, about helping him get clear on his brand story and how he got direction and all that. And then he hit a really rough spot in life and it was challenging. Things didn't go his way, but he said that clarity that he had just kept moving him forward and kept him going. And now he's come out on the other side of that. And he was so appreciative. And I was appreciative that it worked for him as well. But to me, that's moving the needle.
Yeah.
Right? I engaged with him. I had an impact, and we made the world a better place as a result of it. Right. So how do you want the world to change as a result of you sharing whatever that message is, or your brand, whatever the organization is, but how do you want the world to be different? I think that's an important one. And then let me give you just one more. We call this the coffee shop question. And this really gets at the heart of the message and helps you put some meat around it. And that is, if you were to sit down with your target audience, your reader, your customer, whoever that is, if you were to sit down and have a cup of coffee with them, how would you help them solve in that conversation? How would you walk them through, here's how to solve the problem that I help solve, right? Here's how you do it. Because when you frame it like that, I think we call it kind of instinctively know, because we've had those conversations. We've talked to people. We know, I would say, first you need to think about this, then you need to think about this, or here's step one, here's step two, and don't forget to do this, right? And it allows a lot of that to come out. And what that body of answer is, I call it your solution as part of the storytelling structure that we use. I call it the solution portion. It's really the heart of your message. And it's the beginning of your intellectual property, of your unique way of solving a particular problem. And then when you wrap it in your story, it becomes even more unique. And then it becomes the core of a book or a keynote or a course or just all kinds of things, or your brand story, all those kind of things that can be done. So I think, I don't know, hopefully those are helpful. Just a few of the questions that we go through.
Yes, that was a masterclass. And in my head, of course, I was going through, okay, what of these pieces have I done? And I would love to kind of go through the exercise with you, because I think this is something I've wrestled with for years, right?
Yeah.
So as an educator, 26 years of being an educator, most of that time was spent teaching adults. And what I recognized is that how you make people feel determines whether or not they can absorb anything you have to say, right? You have to recognize that they are a human before they are anything else. And so where I went with that in my head was to create more productive joy. And when I say productive joy, I mean that you've got to make work fun so people don't quit. People quit things that aren't fun, but everybody doesn't define fun the same.
Yes,
right?
that's true.
So I'm an extrovert, 100%. I love the wide open fun, but I recognize that my introverted friends, I exhaust them like that.
Yes, yep.
So I have narrowed it to 3 things. Fun means that people feel valued and appreciated. Fun means that people have a voice and they're allowed to use it. And fun means that people are able to leverage their talents for the greater good. So what do I teach? What do I do? What story do I tell? I help you figure out how to make people feel valued and appreciated. I help you figure out how to give them a voice. And I help you figure out what your talents are and what their talents are, so that we can work together.
Right.
And my dog is really excited about that too. Can you hear him?
Yeah. That's 12. Everybody's joyful at your house. Yeah.
Welcome to my world. So hang on one second.
Totally.
He's old and senile and probably saw a fly out the window. I say that to you because I think my solution, the heart of my message, is to treat humans as humans before you do anything else, and then everything else will get better, whether it's your bottom line, your ROI, your whatever. But what would you say? You do this professionally. So which parts of that do you see hitting the mark and missing the mark?
Yeah, I feel like, and I'm going to pull in what I've heard from you on previous episodes too. You've talked about more than just fun. Like you have other components of that.
Logical, fun, and memorable. Very good.
Yeah, exactly. So to me, that is kind of the core of the IP. What you just talked about was one piece of that. Then you begin to unpack that one piece as part of that. And then the overarching message is, how did you say it again? About humans treating people like humans, right?
Right. Yeah, you have to. You have to treat people like humans before you ever want them to gain anything from you, any knowledge, any wisdom, any learning.
Yeah. And so what I would do if I were working with you on this, if we were doing a book or something like that, I would encourage you to think about it from the other perspective. So the storytelling structure that we use, one of the key things about it, when I walk people through it, it's a 5-part structure that we go through. We use it to create all kinds of compelling content. After I introduce it, I ask people, what do you see in common here? Each piece has its own question to ask. And often it very quickly emerges that each question has they or them in it, not you.
Right.
It takes it and turns it all back around, because it's not about you.
Nope.
I like to say your story is about you, but your story is not for you. And so it's about turning that around and who are you trying to reach, getting clear on your audience, and then how are you going to get their attention? What is it that they want? What are their problems that they're having? What's the connection that you're going to make with them? What
Yeah.
the solution has to be presented in a way that actually matters to them. If it's not relevant to them in some way, then they're just going to tune you out. You're just going to be noise. It's nice person. Thanks. Have a good day. Right. So
Right. That's cute for you, Christy. You'll do that over there.
yeah, exactly. And so it has to be about getting clear on that. And then I love what you're saying about treating humans as humans. That to me feels like the overarching, hey, if the one thing that if you, Christine, God forbid, but if you left us today, the one thing, it sounds like the one thing you'd want people to remember is, treat humans like humans, right?
If we just did that, what a world we would have.
Oh, yes. And so I think that's a great overarching. So if I were crafting a book, for example, for you, I would have it something along that. Of course, there's a whole book title exercise you can go through to figure out the right way to position it and all that kind of thing. And then how does it matter to the audience? And then your IP would be those, I think there's 4 different elements in there that you would unpack. And then the things you just said around fun, that, there's a lot of nuance. And along the way, I would work on, you may already have those, creating tools and frameworks and things that can be used to flesh that out. And really be a robust.
Wish I had met you like 5 years ago, because I figured all of this out over a lot longer than, and so I want everybody here to be able to find you. So before I even ask you my favorite question, I'm going to ask, how would somebody find you, Bill? What's the best way for them to learn to tell their story?
Yeah. The easiest way is 2 ways. First of all, I have a new book coming out in October of 2025. So whenever you're listening to this, maybe if it's down the road.
Yes, it is. It's going to be in November of 20. We are now November of 2025. So the book.
So you just go to yourstoryadvantage.com, and get a copy of the book. We've got some cool bonus stuff over there you can claim, and tools and resources and all kinds of fun things. That's one. The other one, though, if you want to talk to us, if you go to mystorybuilders.com/story, mystorybuilders.com/story. Not only can you schedule a call, but we've got some free resources there as well that can help with this whole storytelling exercise. We're going to give you some of that, like our book starter tool and a bunch of other kind of resources, these kind of core questions, all those kind of things that we've talked about. You can get those there. And if you want to have a conversation, we love talking story. We'll talk story all day, every day. So.
Well, I love talking to you, and I have just gotten completely out of myself because I have not asked you yet. If you had to define productive joy, how would you do it?
I'm going to go a little bit deep and then come up for air, if that's all right.
Perfect.
I'm going to start with the second one first, like joy, and then the productive definer around it. To me, joy, it comes from a very deep level. My faith is very important to me. And so my faith in God drives everything I do. That's where my joy comes from. Ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what gives my life meaning and purpose. And I like to tell people, you don't have to share the details of my faith to enjoy the benefits of my beliefs, right? That's who I am. That's how I do what I do. But I think in addition to that, then doing what you feel like you've been called to do, you've been made to do, you're designed to, like when you're putting all those things like my skills of reading cereal boxes 5 times. Who knew there was a place that this would add value to the world? And it's not as a professional cereal box reader, right?
No, because there was no phone to scroll, right? Like we didn't
exactly.
that option.
Exactly. That was the iPhone back in the day. Yeah. So that, to me, joy is doing something meaningful to accomplish a purpose that's bigger than yourself, to meet a need that's in the world and to tell your unique story. I think that's where that joy really comes from. And then the productive part is that I think leaning into that idea of actually making a difference in the world. Am I just producing widgets at the end of the day, or am I finding a deeper meaning in my life, whether I'm an entrepreneur or a business professional or a thought leader or a mom or a dad or whatever the case may be? There's a lot of people out there right now who are just going through challenging things. And so I would say to them, look for the meaning, look for the purpose, I love your message, look for the humans you can connect with today. And if you don't know what your purpose is, lean into that and let that guide you in making a bigger impact.
Phil, that was beautiful. And I always get a different definition. That's kind of what I love, but there are themes that show up. And the 2 that came up for you was that something bigger than yourself, right? A lot of people say that's joy. But what I really liked is that the productive part is making a difference in the world, right? Helping others. So when I wrote my book, my coach said, you need to be the guide on the side and the reader is the hero, right? And you kind of said something very similar where this isn't about you. This is what you experience that is about the reader, is about the human, is about the person that you're trying to help. And it's pretty special that you recognize that for you, productive joy is helping others, is making others able to tell their story.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I often quote Mark Twain, who said that, I'm going to sum it up. It's a larger quotation, but he said pretty much his take was that all of us must admit at the end of the day that all of life is really a soap bubble that is here for a moment, pops, and is hardly worth living. Now, I wouldn't invite Mark to a party, quite honestly.
Like an upper,
he wasn't an upper. And as I hear that, I think, wow, Mark, it's really, I call it the soap bubble life. And a lot of people fall into the trap of thinking it's a soap bubble life. And rather than what I call a faith-focused life, that is a life that is focused on what you believe to be true about others, about life, and so forth. That's a positive direction. And that's what I thought of when you said that was, so many people settle for living that soap bubble life, and they don't have to. Their story is amazing. Their story, when it's shared with the world in a wise way, it can make a more impact. And you don't even have to be building a brand or a business. That's what I want to stress is if somebody's listening right now and they're like, well, I don't really want to do this or that. I just want to do good in the world and live my life. Same thing applies to you. Get intentional about your story, right? Your own group, the intentionality group that you've recently formed and is making the impact. Get intentional about that. Make a difference in the world by figuring out your story and then leveraging that to reach more people.
100%. And I would argue that even if you don't think you're building a brand, you absolutely are.
Oh, absolutely.
And it's either by design or by default. So which way are you going to go?
Yeah. People interact with you and they walk away with some impression of you. That's your brand. Congratulations. You just create.
I hope it was a good one.
Yeah.
I think about, so it's just a fun aside, and then I'm going to ask you some rapid fire questions.
Sure.
But I choose to go to the gym at 5:30 in the morning because it means I get it done. There's no excuses, all the things, right? And when you choose to go to a very early class, there are two types of humans. There are the types of humans that are already ready to talk to all the world, and there are others that are like, are you seriously going to have fun?
Right.
I fall into the first camp, and I
Yeah.
really excited to be there, and I can't wait to say hi to all the humans. And several of them look at me like, under no circumstance should you be right now. Right. And I have to recognize that both are okay, right?
Yeah, sure.
Also, I'm known for that energy, that part of me. That's a choice. I not always feel that at 5:30 in the morning, but I'm going to bring it because that's who I want to be. And so thank you for helping people figure out who they want to be and building them into something really special. It's impressive. Very.
It's okay to be who you are.
Yep. Right? Even when you're wide the heck open like I am.
Yeah. And I would never be that excited at 5:30 in the morning, just to be.
Neither would most humans, but
right.
I kind of love it. So I do have some rapid fire questions. I'm so excited to hear them. Okay, Bill. You already told us that you were a Disney fanatic. However, I'm going to ask this question. It may have nothing to do with Disney. What is your definition of fun?
Wow. Being able to think and be creative and think in creative ways and be free to do that. Having a whole day set aside for that is like amazing.
Yeah. Okay. I love it. And it didn't have anything to do with Disney. Yeah. How do you know that you are showing up as your authentic self?
For me, there's a little voice inside that kind of signals you're in alignment, you're in peace, things are in alignment. I remember many years ago I think it was in my early 20s, maybe, when I realized, there are some situations I show up differently than other situations. Why is that? Why do around certain people I do and certain people I don't? And I made it an aim, like, hey, I always want to show up as the same person, no matter where I am. And I don't even know if I'm 100% there, but I certainly strive to be that, and just be okay with accepting if that's good, that's good. If it's not, it's not. So.
I like it. There's power in that, in the recognition that it's okay. This is the best I got today. How do you channel your best self on your worst days?
Boy, sometimes not well.
Mm.
When I do it well, it's pausing and being intentional about it and recognizing that whatever challenge I'm facing is there for my good and it's helping me make me a better human.
Mm.
It's helping me learn something in some way. And so being intentional about how is this going to be part of my story? What chapter am I going to write next because of this? How can I write this paragraph and direct this paragraph of my story in a more positive way? I think that helps me, again, get intentional.
I fully wrote that down. I've written a lot of things down, to be clear. I've taken
Okay.
notes. And for me, for those of you that weren't watching, you just got to see my notes.
No, sure.
Challenges is there for my good. I'm going to hold on to that because the challenge doesn't go away. It's always there, but it's there to make me better. And I might not act beautifully in the moment, but that's special. So thank you.
Well, and it's even more challenging because if we run from it, then we essentially take a detour. And the detour always leads us right back to where we started, and we got to go through it again because we didn't learn the thing that we could have learned the first time, right? But sometimes the only way out is through.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You have been such a delight and such a powerhouse of information. And before I ask you my final question, I want you to say the name of the book that just came out in October one more time, because I think it's really important that everybody hear it.
Your Story Advantage, and the subtitle is A Proven Path to Maximize Your Impact, Influence, and Income.
And I like that part too, that impact, influence, and income. That's what we're all trying to do, right? Like there's
Sure.
no way around it, but you've written the book on it. That's
Yeah.
pretty.
And to me, it's in that order. Have an impact, make an influence, and make money as you do it to help fuel the whole thing all over again. So
Yeah, you can do it more than once. Definitely. Oh, geez, Bill, you said a lot of things, a lot of really great things, but by nature, people can only hold on to one.
sure.
What's
Sure.
the one major idea that you want to leave people with today?
I think it comes down to one of the things I said, that your breakthrough begins when you start with your story. And if you don't value your story, you're never going to fully maximize your impact. If you aren't intentional about how you're telling your story, you're not going to maximize it. You're not going to be able to leverage it. You know, Archimedes talked about, if I had a lever long enough and a pivot to put it on, I could move the world. And I think what your story does is it lengthens that lever. And when you tell it well, you're able to move the world and have that kind of impact. So start with your story, because that's where your breakthrough is going to come.
Oh my gosh. You are a gift, sir. Thank you. Thank you for not for quitting work in schools, because that obviously was a very valuable
Sure.
thing. But you
Sure.
took that skill and you brought it to the world and you packaged it in such a way that any of us have access to it and you're willing to share it. And that's beautiful.
Well, thank you.
Good listeners, I don't know what to tell you other than you are getting so many free shots of B12 that you ought to be feeling really, really good right about now. So grab a nugget or two of wisdom. I know a couple things that I'm taking with me. Treat humans as humans. Help
Sure.
people live a story worth telling.
Mm.
Recognize that you are creating a brand, whether
Yeah.
by design or by default. So you should do it by design so that you get to write your own story. Thank you so much for being on Productive Joy today. I so appreciate you, Bill. And listeners, thank you for listening. I am challenging you today and every day to figure out a way to turn fun into action.